Okay, I've got some slides here, and there's some quick information on everything, pretty much everything you need to know about Build with AI. So we're going to go through what Build with AI is, some general rules about the hackathon, what are the prizes, and at the end we'll see how we can claim the Google Cloud credits. We're not going to do this part now. We'll do this later on during the end of the event, but the information is right here, and then we'll share these slides afterwards, so you can be up to date with how you can claim everything. Okay, what is Build with AI? I think people should know this by now, but just in case you don't, it is part of the official Google's Global Build with AI series. It is a series of hackathons that are happening worldwide, which use Google's AI tools and platforms to solve issues. So people get Google Cloud, maybe Gemini, Gemma, Vertex AI, Antigravity, MCP, ADK, stuff like that. They use it to build and solve issues with them. Well, we're going to do the same.
I think the first in order to present and to talk about his speech is Darren. So, Darren,
okay,
the floor is yours.
Thank you. Let me just see if I can present my screen. Did that come up okay? All right,
Yep,
awesome.
looks great.
Well, you guys need to do this hackathon using some Google tools. So I'll be talking a little bit about Gemini CLI, MCP and Skills today. And so maybe that will end up being your tool of choice during the hackathon. Who knows? But let's, I will move on. So yeah, my name is Darren Lester. My friends call me Dazbo. So you can all call me Dazbo, of course. I live in the UK. That's where I'm speaking to you from right now. I'm one of your Google developer experts this evening. I'm a GDE in Google Cloud. I will do just a real quick overview of who I am and what I do. I work for a company called EPAM. We are a global consultancy, about 60,000 employees over the globe, mainly spread across US, Europe, India, and we do all things software development, cloud, AI. We're partners of all the big cloud providers, including, of course, the best cloud, which is Google Cloud. Of course, we have thousands of Google certified architects and engineers. And this year we were named Google Partner of the Year, 4th year in a row. So we're very proud of that. If you don't know us, please do check us out. But that is enough about my employer. So yeah, as for me, I am a massive caffeine addict, like many developers. I'm a Google Cloud architect and a Google evangelist, which basically means I love talking to people about Google tech for as long as they will listen to me talking about Google tech. Many years ago, I used to be a developer and then moved on to be a tech lead and then various flavors of architect like infrastructure, solutions, enterprise and cloud. I've led some development teams and architecture teams, and then most recently, in the last few years, my roles have tended to be strategic. But what's quite interesting about this agentic AI revolution that we're all living in right now is that it's making, for me, building software really kind of cool and exciting again, and it just gives us all the ability to be builders and to build cool things that we never would have dreamed were possible just a few short years ago. And for example, projects that I might want to do in my own time that would have previously taken me months, I can probably now achieve in a weekend using agentic tools. So I think that's really cool. And today I'll be talking about how we can do some of these really complex tasks in a short amount of time using the awesome agentic tools that Google provides for us. I'll be doing some live demos with Gemini CLI, which is my favorite tool. I'll talk about some of its built-in capabilities and then show how we can give it some superpowers with MCP, agent skills, that kind of thing. Right. So this is the agenda. By the way, you might have spotted there is a bit of Google Cloud Next branding on these slides. Sorry about that. I actually gave this presentation a few weeks ago at Google Next in Vegas. So I'm basically giving pretty much the same session to you guys today, maybe slightly longer. Yeah, so and thank you very much to the GDG hosts for having me here today, and to all of you for taking the time to listen. This is my first ever GDG event, both as an attendee and a speaker. So yeah, thanks very much for having me. We've got about 20 minutes of content from me here today, and some demos. And since agentic demos can be slightly risky, I have pre-recorded them in case anything goes wrong. Hopefully it won't. And when you get, I presume we'll send out these slides afterwards, and when you get the slides, you'll have all the videos associated with the slides as well. Okay, so let's get into the content then. So why UI automation and UI testing? Well, you should start off by knowing that I actually know pretty much nothing about UI testing and automation, and that's kind of the point. So here, what we're doing is we're using agentic tooling to do things that otherwise we wouldn't be able to do without investing huge amounts of time in learning and practice. And so, although today the demos are about UI and automation, it's the principles that I want you to kind of take away. The fact that you can use agentic tools to just do things that you haven't otherwise got the time to do yourself. Why have I picked UI testing? Well, it's pretty cool for demos, but UI testing has traditionally always been a difficult thing to do. There are tools in the ecosystem that can do UI testing, but they take a long time to master. And UI automation has always been brittle. And what I mean by that is, you build a web UI, you build some tests for it, but what happens if you name your logout button to log off, or if you move your button to a different menu, or if you change the structure of your HTML, for example? Now, traditional testing tools will often break when you do those things. So what we want to be able to do is to be able to create repeatable automation that's insulated from those sorts of changes, and where the automation always works based on your intent rather than based on names or labels or hierarchy of objects. And so today, I'll show you how you can do that with Gemini CLI. I wonder, does putting hands up work? How many folks here have actually used Gemini CLI? Hard to see. I can't see a count. Usually, I find in an audience, there's quite a mix. There'll be a few that have played with it, a few that use it extensively, and quite a bunch of people that have never used it at all. So, yeah, I think this is my favorite productivity tool these days, and I say productivity tool rather than development tool because it's for everyone. And I think a lot of folks are put off by the name because it's called Gemini CLI, command line interface. It kind of, developers feel comfortable, non-developers are somewhat scared of that. But the reality is it's for everyone. So whether you're a software developer, architect, project manager, Scrum Master, tester, it doesn't really matter. I think this tool is a game changer. It can just massively increase the productivity on whatever it is you do on a daily basis. It is, at its most basic level, a command line tool that brings the power of Gemini into your terminal. It is a Google tool, but it's entirely open source. So you can download it from GitHub. You can contribute code to it. You can contribute documentation. You can raise issues. It is platform agnostic, so you can run it on any, you can run it on Windows or Linux or Mac. Let me quickly show you what it looks like. Let's see. So I'm just going to bring it up here. Right. Let's see. Who am I? So I'm just running this inside an Ubuntu terminal at the moment. Okay, it says I'm Dazbo. I'm an engineer from England, and it knows what my GitHub handle is. It knows this stuff because it's using a Gemini MD context file, so it's always good practice to have like a global context file. And if you're used to using Gemini Code Assist, it shares the same context with Gemini Code Assist, which is quite useful. But one of the great things about this that you won't get if you're using, say, the Gemini app in your web browser is the ability to interact with your local operating system. So, for example, show me a tree of my current working directory. Okay, and it's asking me if it can use a local OS command, and I'm saying yes, please go ahead. And it's running a local OS command, and then it's presenting the results of my current working directory to me on my screen. It's a very trivial example, but if I was to type /tools in Gemini CLI, you can see a bunch of the tools that are already built in out of the box. So the ability to do Google search, the ability to pull web pages, the ability to read and write to local file system, local files in the file system, and the example that I just shown you, the ability to run a local shell command regardless of the operating system you're in. One of the cool things about that is it kind of turns you into a terminal god, even if you know nothing about the terminal or your local operating system, because you just have a natural language conversation with Gemini CLI and it does it all for you. But one of the great ways we can power up Gemini CLI is with its ecosystem of things that you can do with it. So reusable prompts, MCP servers, agent skills, hooks, sub-agents, and an extensions ecosystem. And I'm just going to cover a couple of those examples today. So let's start with MCP. A lot of folks will probably know what MCP is already, but this is how I like to explain it. So I like to think of the model that we're using, the AI model, whether it's a large language model or a multimodal model like Gemini, I think of it as the brain. And it's a brain that has no body. It's got no eyes, it's got no hands, it can't interact with the real world, and it only knows what it knows at the time it was trained. So if you ask it something reasonably current, it'll either give you some out-of-date information or it will make stuff up. And we all know that as hallucination. And MCP is one way we can solve this problem. So MCP gives this brain a body to work with. So it gives it eyes to see the outside world and hands to interact with it. It's an open protocol that provides our agent with the ability to access real-time data or call APIs or execute code. So how MCP broadly works is you configure your agent, in this case Gemini CLI, with an MCP server, and that MCP server exposes a bunch of related tools to your agent. So with that in place, you simply issue a natural language prompt to your agent, and the agent is then able to automatically discover the tools that it has available through the MCP server, pick the most appropriate tools to respond to your request, and then execute those tools. So on the right hand side of the slide, I've just listed some of my favorite MCP tools. AV tool is really cool if you're working with video or audio files. Developer knowledge API basically gives your agent all of the current knowledge of all the Google Cloud ecosystem and APIs. But let me quickly demonstrate GitHub MCP tool. So if I bring back my Gemini CLI and type MCP list, you can see I've got a whole bunch of MCP tools installed, MCP servers, and each of those servers has a bunch of tools associated with it. I've disabled a few of them just because I don't want it to slow me down or get in the way of the demo today. But you can see I've got one called GitHub. Now, I don't need to know anything about this MCP server. I don't need to know about the tools. But if I was to just copy and paste a prompt here, if I was to say, what public GitHub repos do I have? List them here in a markdown table in descending stars order, along with their primary technologies, right? This would probably take me quite, a little while if I was going to code it by hand. First thing that Gemini CLI does is it says, hey, I know I need to use, I've got an MCP tool that can do this. Am I allowed to use it? So I'm going to say yes, please go ahead, use this and all related tools from the MCP server. And there you go, it does it. It's instantly pulling back all of my public repos with the stars and with the technologies. I mean, I know it's only a trivial example, but I think it's quite a powerful demo of what you can do with such MCP tools. So that's what MCP is. Now what we're going to do is use a free and open source off the shelf MCP server called BrowserMCP to automate remote control of the browser. So what we're going to do is we're going to remote control a Chrome browser using natural language prompts into Gemini CLI. Now, for the rest of the demos, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run Gemini CLI inside Antigravity. I'm not actually going to use Antigravity. I just want to show you what it's very common. I think you're familiar. You like to work with your preferred IDE, and of course you can have a terminal inside that IDE, and within that terminal you can run Gemini CLI. If you don't know Antigravity, by the way, that is Google's Agent First IDE. So it combines this familiar look of VS Code, because it's a fork of VS Code, alongside an agent manager that allows you to do agent first development, and then do things like plan and execute and verify tasks agentically. So that's why we're looking at Antigravity now. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a sample application that I've built. I vibe coded this app. It took about 2 minutes to build it. So if I just bring it up here, it's running locally. All it is a very simple application that has a login screen, and it requires me to type in admin and password. And when I log into the screen, then it brings up some dynamic tiles. And notice that the logout button is actually called Exit Gateway. And I'm just going to leave it logged on for now. The next thing I'm going to do is we need to install, in order to remote control the browser, we need to install an extension into Chrome itself. So one way we can, so let me just paste a link in here and I'll show you this extension. This is the BrowserMCP extension. You click on add to Chrome and you install it. I've already done it. So the whole process takes about 10 seconds. It's that quick. But having already installed it, I'm just going to enable it. I'm going to connect to this tab. So now my MCP server running in Gemini CLI will be able to remote control this tab. Now, what you then would always have to do with any MCP server that you want to use is you'd have to configure your agent to use it. And that's usually by using a few lines, configuring a few lines of JSON. And in this case, we would want to configure our settings.json in Gemini CLI. But I don't want to do that. So what I'm just going to show you is what you can do is with Gemini CLI extensions, you can package up things like MCP server config. So if I go to GeminiCLI.com and we have a look at it, they've got an extensions library. You can see they've got nearly 800 extensions. An extension can be MCP servers, reusable prompts, various things, skills, and it can be a combination of all those things as well. So if I just look up BrowserMCP here, what we can see, there's an extension. I've made this previously, and all it does is wraps this server configuration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy this install command line. I'll come back to here. I'm going to install the extension on the command line. Okay, that's installed, so that was pretty quick. Now I'm just going to launch Gemini. If I do MCP list, what we should see is that the BrowserMCP, there it is. There's the BrowserMCP server has been installed, and there's all the tools that it has available to it. So in theory, we've got everything we need. So now I'm just going to run my natural language prompt, right? And the prompt is going to be, again, I'm just going to copy and paste. Right. Using BrowserMCP, you wouldn't normally need to say use BrowserMCP, right? Your agent will infer which MCP server to use and which tools to use. But sometimes if you've got lots of MCP servers and maybe they've got overlapping capabilities, it could get confused. So sometimes I will tend to be more explicit, but use BrowserMCP, connect to my local application. If it's not showing the login screen, and we know it's not because I've already logged in, first log out, then log in with admin and password, verify that the dashboard says what it needs to say, read the telemetry values and present them back in a markdown table. So if I run that, fingers crossed, first thing it should do is ask me if it's allowed to use the BrowserMCP server. Oh, thank goodness. Right, it says it's found it. Can it use it? I say yes. I'm going to move this out the way. Oh, I should have been back on here. All right, it's logged out already because I'm not touching the screen at the moment. And normally this is incredibly quick, but of course, because I'm now doing a live demo, it's being incredibly slow. Oh, okay. It's working. It's put in admin. It's put in password. It's logging in. That mouse is not me moving it. It's read the screen. And it's completed. And if I come back to my window, you can see it's just the Gemini CLI has come back to me saying I've navigated the application, performed the login, verified the dashboard, and it pulled back what it saw in the screen and it's presented it in that table. So that's pretty cool, right? So that was browser remote control and automation, all from a natural language prompt with very little setup. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to disconnect, because I'm not going to use BrowserMCP anymore in this demo. And actually, I'll close this session. I'm not even going to show that application anymore. So that was quite cool, but there are some weaknesses with what we just did, right? So BrowserMCP, it only works with Chrome or Chromium compatible browsers, and it doesn't work headless, meaning you have to have a locally installed visible browser running to remote control. So you couldn't use it in a fully automated CI/CD pipeline. You have to have a tab already open to remote control, and it can't interact with your file system. So it can't do things like, for example, take a snapshot of the screen that it sees and save it. But there are tools that can do that, much more sophisticated automation tools. Google recently released one called Chrome DevTools MCP, and I'll show you that in a minute, or at least I've got a code lab that will demonstrate that. And another tool is Playwright. Playwright is a very popular open source framework for this kind of testing. It's largely replaced Selenium for modern UI automation. And you can use Playwright in a couple of ways. One is you can use its SDK, or another is you can install its CLI locally onto your file system and run CLI commands. But learning how to use either the SDK or the CLI, it takes a lot of time, or does it? So this is where skills come in, agent skills. So you can think of an agent skill as a pre-packaged unit of knowledge that your agent loads on demand when it needs it in order to achieve a goal. So I like to think of the movie The Matrix, right? So, you know, when Neo jacks in and then 10 seconds later he says, I know Kung Fu, it's just like that. So if you think of the world of AI in the old days, and when I say old days, I mean 12 months ago, if we wanted a model like Gemini to be an expert in Playwright, we might have to fine tune that model, or we might have to give it a masses of sample prompts to do that. But now we can just provide a skill, and we don't have to write the skill usually, because if it's a common type of task, we can just download it off the shelf. And Playwright has an off-the-shelf skill, and we'll use that in a second. So what is a skill? This is a quick view of the anatomy of a skill. It's basically just a self-contained folder. That folder can contain optional stuff like scripts that you want it to run, or templates that you want it to use, reference files. But the only compulsory part of the skill is the skill.md file. And this on the right is an example of such a skill.md file. It's basically just a prompt with a header. And the header is called the front matter. And the header only really contains two things: the name of the skill and the description of the skill. This bit's really important because the description says what the skill does and when your agent should use it. This is kind of cool because when you use MCP servers, when your agent starts up and you've provided MCP servers, all those tools that the MCP server exposes all get loaded into your model's context. So that's consuming your context, it's consuming tokens, it contributes to latency, it contributes to cost. The thing about the skill is, when the skill loads, when your agent starts up, it only reads the stuff in the header, which is very short on context usage. So it only reads enough to know when it should activate that skill. And then all the rest of the skill, all of that content, or all of those associated scripts or whatever you might have provided with the skill, only get loaded when they are needed. So this is called progressive disclosure. So it's very, very efficient. So now what we'll do is we'll couple it with Playwright. So it turns out skills are very useful when you want to teach an agent how to use a local CLI like the Playwright CLI. So that's what we're going to do now. So I've already downloaded and installed the Playwright CLI because it takes a couple of minutes and I don't want to waste your time with it. And I've also already downloaded the skill off the shelf. Let me just quickly show you what it looks like. So this is the skill. Let's see, it just sits in this Playwright CLI folder inside my skills folder, and you can see it's got a very simple header that says automate browser interactions, test web pages, and work with Playwright tests. And then you can see that the content is quite lengthy, and it's just a bunch of CLI commands which I don't have to know and I don't really care about. So let's see. So now what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm just going to disable BrowserMCP because I don't want Gemini to try and use it. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to enable the Playwright skill because, skills, enable Playwright. Okay, that's enabled. And just to belt and braces, I'm just going to restart Gemini at this point. So if I was to type /skills list, you should now see there's a Playwright skill. Yep, there it is. So moment of truth then, does it work? So I'm going to use a prompt similar to what we did before, but this time I want to say is using Playwright, connect to the application. The application's still running, but I've closed the browser in headless mode, so we won't see it. Log in as admin and password, verify the dashboard, take a screenshot, save it to a local file, then read the telemetry values that we've seen and record them, then wait 3 seconds, read them again and present them back in a markdown table. Okay, fingers crossed. Okay. It's asking me whether it can use the skill, which it found. I've said, yes, let's go ahead. Oh, and it's checking whether the application's running. Okay, I can see it created an output folder. Oh, there's nothing in it yet. Oh, that's interesting. Bad demo. I hadn't installed Chromium browser locally on this machine previously. Well, let's see if it can fix itself. Because what Playwright CLI is doing is it's using its own local instance of Chromium in the background. Oh, okay, it worked. It's created a screenshot. There's the screenshot we wanted to see. So that's cool. It's reading the dashboard. It's doing the 3-second delay that we asked for, hopefully. Okay. There's the first pass. This is a bit slower than I've normally been experiencing with these demos, but you know, that's agentic demos. Sometimes they don't do things quite how you expect. Okay, it finished its job. It's created the screenshot that we wanted as evidence of our test, and it read our telemetry values twice, and it's presented it back in a table. So that's it. That was the demo using Playwright. So I'll just wrap up by saying, okay, when do you use an MCP versus skill? MCP is kind of a client server type setup, right? So your agent is the client. The MCP server could be something that you've installed locally, but it could be a fully managed remote MCP server, and Google provide loads of those, like for working with things like GKE and BigQuery. And the advantage of that is you don't have to manage that. You don't have to run anything locally. And if they were to update BigQuery, they will also update their MCP server to match. But it is quite heavyweight on token usage, as I mentioned before. But if you want to do something complicated, like have an MCP server that can convert your natural language to SQL to work with BigQuery, for example, then MCP is going to be the way to go. Skills, on the other hand, are about providing your agent with local just-in-time knowledge using this efficient progressive disclosure mechanism. And they're really useful to be paired with locally installed applications or CLIs, but also they can be really useful for telling your agents how to work best with an MCP server. So often you'll find MCP servers come packaged these days with a skill. So it's not either or, right? You can use them together. You just need to pick, the right one for the task you've got at hand. You can try all of this yourself. I've got a code lab here. It'll run you through everything we've just done, how to install everything, how to use BrowserMCP, Playwright, Chrome DevTools, doing stuff with Antigravity. So yeah, give that a go. Let me know how you get on with it, and ping me and let me know. And with that, I will stop talking because I'm probably over time. How are we doing time-wise?
It's just 1 minute overtime, so
okay, excellent, not so bad.
Good stuff. Also,
Hope
you can drop the code lab link in chat for everyone if you want them to check it out.
Sure. Yeah.
And we've also got 2 questions. Let me read them out for you.
Thank you.
Ilir asked, what are the differences between, sorry, what differs BrowserMCP from DevTools MCP?
BrowserMCP is quite limited. So it was some of the things I touched on actually in, so if I was to go back, yeah, it's these issues, right? BrowserMCP, it remote controls a single tab. You have to connect it to that tab. You have to have that browser running locally. And it can't do all of this stuff like grabbing screenshots and saving them. The Chrome DevTools MCP provides all of the capabilities that I've listed here. It can do all the stuff, pretty much the stuff that I just demonstrated with Playwright. And it can do a whole bunch of stuff, like it can pull telemetry from your web pages. And you know when you go into your browser and you press, is it F11? You bring up the debug screen in Chrome and you can interact with it. Everything that you can do there, you can pretty much do with the DevTools MCP remotely.
Nice. We've also got another question, again by Ilir. What does it mean for a skill to be disabled? Isn't the skill enabled by default when installed? So then later the model decides if it should be activated or not.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you let me bring up my so you can see I've got quite a lot of skills installed, right? And that's fine. And exactly. Once they're in the skills folder, they're loaded by default. But a thing you can do with Gemini CLI is you can turn off anything you want, right? So I can go skills disable and then pick any of these skills and disable it. So when you disable it and then reload Gemini, and there is actually just a skills reload command, that skill is no longer read into Gemini. So it basically clears it out of Gemini's context, Gemini CLI's context. So then it won't know about it. So you might want to do this if I don't know, maybe you're experimenting with 2 or 3 different skills with a similar overlapping capability, and maybe Gemini CLI keeps picking the wrong skill. So in that scenario, you might want to, and this is quite a good example of that, right? So when I'm doing the BrowserMCP, when I want Gemini CLI to use BrowserMCP to remote control the browser, I don't want it to use the Playwright skill, but it might try and pick the Playwright skill. And that's why at the beginning of this demo, I had already disabled it. Does that answer the question?
Awesome, thank you. I think it does. Yeah, thanks for the answers. Thank you, Ilir, and also thank you, Darren. Sick, awesome presentation. Okay, up next we've got Andre. Unfortunately,